What's up, guys? We are back. So as you've seen in the last video, we had just got the body set down onto the frame on our blocks. I'll show you how I stack the blocks up here in a second. But we got it set down on the blocks. We are now centered side to side in the front and side to side in the rear and front to back in the fender well. This is how it looks. Got my good old helper Jeremy over here. This is how we're looking. Pretty leveled with the bottom of the frame rail down here. Tires centered in the wheel well. So we have like a 1/2 inch wood board, it's like interior trim board. That's what we have back here in the back. There's a cross member. It goes from frame rail to frame rail on the second gen right here. That gets you really close to hitting the body on it. But we put that wood board right in front of that cross member on the cab cross member to space the cab away from the frame about a 1/2 inch. And then the back end from the side of the frame rail to this pinch weld right there, 14.5 inches is the center point measurement for both sides. And in the front, I measure from here on the frame rail over to this pinch weld. And this is 14.5 on both sides. It's within an 1/8 inch currently. We're gonna set the mounts there because you'll have an 1/8 inch of play in your body mounts anyways. So we're gonna get our mounts measured out and trimmed, set our bushings up on the mounts, and go from there. Let's go. All right, guys, we got our rear mount set. It is 2¼ inches from the side of the frame rail to the center of the bolt hole on this rear mount. So they're just tacked in place for now. Whenever you go to do this, put the bushings on here and tighten the bolt all the way up, like sink her all the way down as far as it'll go. Mount it down and squeeze it, and then tack it. That way it's set to where it's gonna be once the body's sitting on and the mounts are tight and all the wood's out. So we got both sides done. We're moving on to the front. Old Jeremy boy's up here inside. He ran the impact for me, but we're moving on to the front side. We're gonna have to cut these down. My little wheel chalk here. We'll get this trimmed down and get our measurement set for the center of the bolt hole in here. It's gonna be sort of over the top of this control arm, this upper control arm. But we'll get it set up, prep the surfaces and tack it, and then lift the whole cab back up off the frame and weld everything out. These are the factory Dodge mounts repurposed to mount this dent side body. The measurement from the side of the frame to the center of the bolt hole is 2¼ inches on both sides. And the front, I think, was like 5¼ or 5.5, somewhere around in there from the side of the frame. But as you can see from here, that frame turns in quite a bit. So that's why I have my gap there, because I basically measured straight from the bolt to the side of the frame and it was 5.5 inches, 5¼ inches. So that's what I chopped the bracket at. That's why the front half of the bracket is on the side of the frame and the back half is away from it. Yeah, we're gonna set the tripod up and get the welding. Let's go. All right, got those welded out real quick, but the phone is about to die. Got to set it up on the charger. and I'm gonna go ahead and box the top sides of these and get it all welded up and grind it down and looking pretty. So, all right guys, I want to show you this. So the rear cab mounts on this thing from the Dodge have like this little dip whoop-de-doo thing on the top of them. Here, look. So they got this little like swoop where the mount like comes up a little farther on the frame for the Dodge. And whenever you trim them down, that little swoop is still in there. So over here, we've notched it out. And I went over to the material section in the shop, grabbed this piece of square tubing and cut a flat piece out of it with the bend in it. And we have our little sliver here. So we're gonna take that and set it right down in there like that and keep her flush with the top of the mount. Just like that. Weld her up, grind her down, make her look pretty, throw a coat of paint on her, on to the next one. All right, there she is, fully welded out. Do a little bit of sanding down on her, clean her up, smooth her out a little bit for the top side for where the bushing sits, right there. But boxed in, welded out. On to the next one. All right guys, we got the lights off because we're fixing to run to town, get some flap discs so I can sand this stuff up and make it look pretty. But here's our filler panel for this front mount. I went ahead and spot welded the side of the frame rail where the grinder dug in from cutting the original mounts off. We're moving right along. So we're gonna go get some flap discs so we can come back and smooth all that out, sand all that down, smooth our mounts out. We'll also grab some paint while we're in town too. But go get some materials and stuff and come back and get back at it. Let's go. All right guys, got all of our grinder marks on the side of the frame rails smoothed out. Got our mounts sanded down, cleaned up on both sides. We are ready to lay a coat of paint on these things. Cover all this bare metal. Set her down one last time. Mark where our hole's gonna be in the floorboard for the shifter. Lift her back up one last time. Cut our hole out. Set her down. Bolt her up. Move on to the front clip. Let's go. All right guys, here we are. She is officially sat down on the frame for the last time. The hole is cut in the floorboard. All our mounts are painted up. Our bushings are set. Gotta put the lower half of the bushings on, put the nuts on the mounts, tighten them all down, but we're gonna start moving on to the front clip. Disassemble all this stuff, take the clutch fan off. Then we'll set the grill shroud back up on the fenders with the front core support from the 76. And start trimming everything to fit. Let's roll on. core support is stripped apart. We got the radiator laying here and the intercooler laying here. I got both core supports up here right now. 4 core supports blocked up. You can see how close it is to our crank pulley. There's not a lot of room doing it this way. Once you get the radiator set in here, get everything trimmed out, get the radiator and intercooler set in here, there's not a lot of room between the radiator and the motor. There's only just enough, maybe 3 inches between the bottom of the radiator and the crank pulley. But you can place electric fans in here. There's just enough room for electric fans on this bottom side and that top side over there on the radiator for electric fans, like 10 to 12 inch electric fans. So that's what we're gonna do with this one. All right, guys, hopefully you can hear me because I got the fan on behind me. But our new core support came in, got it stuck on here. We went ahead and stuck on our inner fenders. You can sort of see them back there. But our inner fenders are in, the new core support's in, and I'm gonna go ahead and start chopping it up. So we got it all bolted up. We have our Dodge core support underneath it, centered. Everything's lined up, and I'm ready to start tacking in the core support mounts down here. But I'm gonna go ahead and chop the center out of this, sort of get the radiator fitted and pushed in as far as I can go to leave just enough space for electric fans in between the radiator and the pulleys on the front of the motor. That way we have the least amount of trimming possible to do on the grill shroud and the grill bezels. So without further ado, we're gonna set the camera up and time lapse and start trimming this thing out. Let's go. All right, guys, here's how close we got our lines for this fitment. So I'm gonna go ahead and pull the radiator back off. I'm gonna cut a square out of this with this hole in it and then flip the hole to the inside to scoot the radiator another inch or 2 inches to the inside, because we have enough room in here to come a little bit closer. So as long as we can get the inside of the radiator here even with the inside of that core support, I'll be happy with that. But currently we don't have enough room for the radiator to sit right here, still get the intercooler in there, and then still put our grill shroud on. And then we also have the radiator cap as well that we have to worry about. So we're gonna try to get this top side pushed all the way in to where the radiator cap is over here on the inside. We're gonna go ahead and do some more chopping, moving around, switching up, welding, and then get back to it. Let's go. Guys, we got her all trimmed out, got her fitted where we need to. So I don't know if I've said this before, but being that we're doing the swap this way and leaving the engine where it is from factory, there's not enough room after you put the body and the core support and everything in here to use the factory Dodge clutch fan. So you have to use electric fans. So I try to hug the radiator as close to these pulleys as I can get it to be able to run an electric fan on the top side of the radiator over there and on the lower side of the radiator over here, and be able to stagger them down here and up there. So we got it set right about at the spot it needs to be able to fit the fans up there like I just said. And I went ahead and started cleaning the core support up on the top here. I'm gonna start reinforcing it with this 1-inch flat stock, 1/8 inch thick. We're gonna stick that up in there, weld it up, get the core support reinforced on the front. And then on the back side, I'm also going to reinforce it in an L shape like this, sort of fashion, up and down and then side to side. All right guys, this is what I came up with for the radiator mount. So check this out. So we got our piece of flat stock, 1/8 inch thick. We got it bent around like that with a nut welded on it. Check it out. So the way this is set up with the room that we have in here, there's not enough space. I'm gonna try to get this radiator cap off. There we go. There's not enough space to get the radiator to lean forward and come out from the inside of the core support. So to be able to replace this radiator in the future, he's gonna have to take the whole grill shroud off. But, the way I got this set up is these little mounting tabs are gonna come in here from the back side and weld against the back wall of the core support right here and have our nuts back there already tack welded on. So all I have to do is just unbolt it from the outside here and be able to take the radiator out of the front. Just like that. Look at that fitment. Just like that. Move on to the next side once we get this side tacked up and welded. Let's go. All right guys, we got this side tacked in and bolted. It still allows us to have some room for the cap to go on as well. Just like that. So, that side's tacked up. I'm gonna wait to weld all of it out completely and clean it all up pretty and everything. Until later on. I'm gonna go ahead and get this side mounted and tacked. All right guys, we got our mounts welded up on both sides. They're tacked in place. So I had to make the mounts to where you could roll it out to the outside. So this is our clearance here. Get the cap off there, and this is our clearance. Just like that. So I'm gonna go ahead and pull this radiator off of here. And then we'll get the sides trimmed out. You see where I marked them right there. We'll get the sides trimmed out. I'm gonna set the intercooler back up in there with the radiator and start getting them together. Let's go. All right guys, we've been doing some work. Check this out. So we now have our tabs for our intercooler welded on down here on both sides. We still have to make the top mounting tabs, but I took the AC condenser off the front of the intercooler and test fitted the grill shroud, and there's quite a bit of material that has to be trimmed off the grill shroud to get it to fit up against the fenders where it needs to and fit around the intercooler and stuff. So I don't have enough room between the intercooler and the grill shroud for the AC condenser. So I came up with this plan of moving it in the center here, in between the intercooler and the radiator, and we repurposed the original condenser mounts that were riveted to the top of the intercooler and the bottom of the intercooler down here. We repurposed those, bent them out flat, and then drilled holes and put screws into it to hold the condenser on there. Once we get the intercooler mounted where it needs to be, I'm gonna start fitting the grill shroud and trimming it around it. So, making progress. Let's go. All right, guys, I have this grill shroud trimmed as far as I want to take it. It's actually, like you can see here, it's not straight like it's supposed to be. It's actually kind of bowed out. But I don't want to trim any more out of it, because then we'll have the intercooler sticking through the grill shroud on the outside of the bezels. So I'm going to try to trim the bezels down and shave the bezels down now to fit in here for what we got. But it's really tight. It is really tight. But it's coming together. Like it's happening. It's gonna work. I'm gonna make it work. Let's go. I'm gonna go ahead and swap the grinder to the sanding disc flapper wheel, and I'm gonna start shaving these down to fit in there. So let's do that. Let's go. All right, guys, I got both bezels fitted for the most part. We'll do the fine tuning whenever I get back to it, but I'm gonna take everything off for now. Take the grill shroud back off, take the radiator, intercooler, AC condenser, take all that back off, and then pull the whole core support back out of the truck. And then I'm gonna go through and weld up all the stuff that's tacked. So like the radiator mounts back here, intercooler mounts up here. I do have a steering column bearing. It's a solid billet bearing that goes in place of the plastic bushing bearing that's on the steering column. So I'll wait to finish the steering until then. But as you can see from here, I have the outer stem, like the very end stem. It's like 3 inches long. I cut that off of the Dodge steering column, and it slides over the shaft on the Ford steering column, and I have a hole drilled in it right now with that bolt in it, just for temporary time being, to keep it where it's at, keep it all lined up. But when we get that billet bearing in, I'll slide the billet bearing in and then weld this Dodge shaft to the Ford shaft, the way there's not any slop or play in it or anything, and then we can connect to the Dodge steering shaft. No issue. Then we'll move on to doing the Hydro Boost brakes. Get that mounted in the firewall. I have Ford 4-speed pedals. We'll get those mounted in the firewall, get the clutch hooked up and everything. And then wiring. I am really scratching my head on this wiring, but I think I might have it figured out. I will say I'm feeling quite behind on this schedule for this project, so I'm probably just going to set the camera up in time lapse and try to bust through as much stuff as I can, and get everything tidied up, and we'll just go back over it later on, and I'll tell you what all I did. But I don't know how much commentating I'm going to be doing for the points that we're at right now. So we're going to time lapse it, get this stuff pulled apart, get this core support welded up, try to get it stuck back on here, get it mounted, move on to steering, brakes, and then wiring. Let's go. my genius idea for the old clutch pedal and hydraulics here. So you can see we got the hydraulics poking through the firewall back here. Get it to focus. Hydraulics poking through the firewall. I cut the tab off of the Dodge pedal and welded it to the side of the 4-speed pedal to the 79 Ford. So that's how she works right there. Got it welded up top here and welded down here, and a little bit on the inside in there. Shouldn't be a problem. Now I just got to make this brake pedal mount over here line up. Getting there though, one piece at a time.